The modern world views early human history as a brutal, unforgiving meat grinder. We are told that before modern medicine, sterile nurseries, and automated monitoring, infant mortality was a catastrophic coin flip. From an evolutionary perspective, human babies are the most vulnerable, helpless offspring on the planet, unable to walk, cling to fur, or regulate their own temperature for months after birth. Yet, despite being surrounded by apex predators, shifting ice ages, and infectious diseases, early humans didn't just survive. They expanded across every ecosystem on Earth. How did the most helpless organism in nature successfully navigate a hostile world without a single modern safety net? The mystery deepens when we look at the mathematical limits of maternal biology. In the wild, an ape mother like a chimpanzee nurses and protects her single infant for up to 5 or 6 years before having another. This long gap is biologically mandatory because a solo primate mother cannot physically gather enough food or provide enough protection to keep two highly dependent offspring alive simultaneously. Yet, the forensic record reveals that ancient human mothers were defying this rule, birth spacing at an incredibly compressed rate of every 2 to 3 years. If a nomadic human mother was constantly on the move, tracking megafauna, how could she physically carry, feed, and protect multiple helpless infants at once without her reproductive cycle collapsing under the sheer weight of the metabolic demand? When archaeologists analyze the bones of the children who did survive the Paleolithic era, they discover a startling anomaly. Their remains do not reflect a state of constant, desperate starvation, chronic disease, or fragile neglect. Instead, Paleolithic juvenile skeletons consistently exhibit dense bone mineralization, thick cortical bone, and minimal markers of severe nutritional stress when compared to early agricultural children who lived millennia later. The forensic data leaves us with a massive, unresolved contradiction. How did nomadic, prehistoric groups achieve high-density, robust health for multiple dependent children simultaneously in a world with no stable agriculture, no storage systems, and no permanent shelter? The traditional model of the isolated nuclear family unit completely fails to explain how ancient infants survived. To resolve the friction between infant vulnerability and human expansion, we must introduce a completely different framework. Humans did not survive by forcing the biological mother to be the sole caretaker. For hundreds of thousands of years, human child rearing operated as a highly specialized communal network, the Cooperative Rearing Matrix. Human infants were not raised by parents. They were raised by an interlocking social architecture of alloparents who treated child survival as a collective, systemic priority. In the Cooperative Rearing Matrix, an infant was handled, carried, and comforted by up to a dozen different individuals within the first weeks of life. Grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, and non-related subadults served as alloparents. This collective network completely broke the maternal energy bottleneck. While the biological mother recovered her physical strength or spent energy foraging for nutrient-dense resources, the child was kept safe, warm, and constantly protected by a revolving guard of dedicated caretakers. This massive distribution of labor is the exact mechanism that allowed human mothers to safely compress their birth intervals without sacrificing child survival. The most critical anchor in this survival matrix was a profound evolutionary anomaly unique to humans: menopause. Unlike almost all other mammals who reproduce until they die, human females live for decades past their reproductive prime. This was not a biological accident, it was an evolutionary masterstroke. Post-reproductive grandmothers acted as the ultimate childhood insurance policy. Possessing a lifetime of ecological data, tool-making skills, and foraging expertise, these elders provided a massive caloric and protective surplus directly to their grandchildren, absorbing the shocks of environmental scarcity and transferring critical survival intelligence down the lineage. This communal architecture was locked into place by our very neurobiology. Human infants evolved a unique, highly expressive emotional toolkit, including complex facial mimicry and specific vocal crying signatures, designed to hack the empathy of an entire group, not just one woman. When an infant cried, it triggered a synchronized hormonal response across the entire band. Oxytocin surged, and cortisol levels spiked in nearby alloparents, compelling the collective to soothe and protect the child. Human infants were neurologically hardwired to expect a village, and the village was biochemically compelled to respond. Furthermore, this shared responsibility extended to nutrition. Long before the invention of commercial formulas, ancient communities utilized wet nursing and pre-mastication, the sharing of pre-chewed, easily digestible, nutrient-dense foods by multiple adults. This meant that if a mother's milk supply fluctuated due to illness or seasonal stress, the infant's nutritional baseline remained completely undisturbed. The child was anchored to a collective caloric reservoir rather than a single biological point of failure. The ancient nursery proved that human children were never designed to be kept alive by an isolated pair of parents working in a vacuum. We survived the Ice Age because we pooled our vulnerability, transforming childcare into a collective defense strategy. Today, we live in an architectural landscape of unprecedented material abundance, yet parents face unprecedented burnout, anxiety, and profound isolation. The modern parenting crisis is not a personal failure. It is the natural friction of trying to run an ancient, deeply social operating system inside an isolated modern box. We have built the most secure, temperature-controlled homes in human history, but in dismantling the village, we left our families to fight the wilderness alone.